Hi there, it's Vanessa. I haven't recorded a video in forever. I might come off a little bit rusty. I wanted to discuss the things that I've been reading recently, and by recently, it'll probably encompass 3 weeks worth or like a month's worth at this rate. I can give you a little catch up of my life. I basically got a small internship. I've been also volunteering, and then from that internship I sort of got a job out of nowhere for like 3 weeks. So that's what I've been up to lately. Another thing that has been kind of limiting my video making is the fact that everything is just everywhere around me. I can give you a tour. Here is the room where all my stuff is, and it's just hanging out there until the end of June when we finally move. So things have just been messy and there's no real filming location for me. We also got a puppy, so that's also been taking up a lot of our time because having a puppy is basically having like a child. So let's go through the things that I have been reading. Since the last time we talked, I think I've read 6 things. A lot of them are pretty short, so let's talk about it. Photobooth. This is overdue at the library, so I need to return it. This is a graphic memoir written by Meags Fitzgerald, and it follows her passion with photo booths. As a child and like growing up as a teenager, she always like sought them out to take all the pictures she could in it, and also she started using it as a place where she could express herself through art. So the photo booth and the experience of the photo booth also became a way for her to express her creativity. So this one, it follows that part, definitely like her personal love for it, but the majority of this book actually focuses on the photo booth's history. So the history of these machines and how they came to be, how they were used, and how they are kind of going away from us now that we have all these cell phones around us and we don't really need these photo booths as like a place for us to take pictures of ourselves. There was definitely a lot of information in here. I felt like it delved in too much, and it was too much of a niche kind of hobby. I didn't care as much about the actual history of it as much as I cared about like her personal attraction to the photo booth as like a medium and as like a place where she saw herself grow up. So I kind of wish there was a little bit more memoir in this than there is. One part that I really loved that was about her. It was when she was traveling and she went to Italy, and she has this whole part where she feels like she's being called out a bunch, ciao bella, all around her. She said, on 2 occasions she was aggressively followed by men who had made suggestive gestures at me. She says, this is 2012, I just want to eat a panini without fearing for my sexual safety. I was in Italy in 2013, and this was my experience too. There were some really weird times where I felt like, why are men calling out to me? Her face there and this whole feeling that she had there, I completely connected with because I've gone through that as well. Yeah, and I really also love the art in this. I feel like this is the kind of art that I really look for in graphic memoirs. It's kind of free form. There's just lots of illustrations all over the page, and it doesn't follow any like specific format. Overall, I would say if you're interested in this, definitely go into it. It's a very different kind of graphic memoir because it focuses so much on a specific history. Overall, it's just a nice thing to pass the time. Let's check on Puppy. Alright, he's not doing anything mischievous. Let's go on to the next thing that I finished, which was The Vegetarian by Han Kang. I finally got to The Vegetarian. I feel like it had like a revival on the people that I subscribe to, and like 3 people were reading it. I started reading it, and then Valentina was starting a buddy read with it with somebody else, and I was just like, oh, I'm halfway through with it, let me join in, and then they caught up really quickly. It's a tiny book, and we read the 3 of us together, and that experience of that buddy read I think was really great because the people that I was reading it with were not just engaged with the text, but they were engaged with like the context that led to the text. I've had that happen in other buddy reads as well, but this one I feel like we were really into like trying to decipher how the society actually works that led to Han Kang thinking up this story. To me, this book really is just a young woman that's rebelling against her society and like her society's expectations of her and her gender. Because she is going against that, she is being subversive in that way, she is deemed insane. And instead of asking her and trying to figure out what is going on with her, what is her mental state like, how can we get her to heal and feel better, we don't. We just tell her, you can't be acting this way, you need to be acting this way instead. I understand how people mean that this book is disturbing. What people mean by disturbing, in my opinion, is that it leaves you unsettled. Not so much that the things that are going on are like gross. The reasons that they feel it's disturbing is because it's unsettling to a person, a lot of people, women who are reading this, feeling like some part of them is being portrayed here. I love the first two parts. I think I liked them better as I was reading them, but I think the third part is a lot more of like explaining everything and like using this big metaphor to explain her state. So the first two parts read really quickly. The first two parts are just basically men being fucked up, but definitely compelling in that I could not put it down when I started those first two chapters. Definitely a book that has like gone in the rating in my head as time has gone on. I originally rated it 4 stars, but now I feel like it's 4.5, and it might just even make it to like the top 3 favorite books of the year once 2017 is done. Really great and really worth your time. The next thing that I read was The Song Machine by John Seabrook. I listened to this exclusively on audiobook as I was going down home and then coming back up. This book, as a lover of pop music, was definitely interesting to me. I first heard about it on the podcast Switched on Pop, so it follows a lot of hit makers and traces the growth of this music from the 1990s, thinking of like Britney, thinking of Backstreet Boys, thinking of NSYNC. It also has lots of chapters about Rihanna and her coming onto the scene, as well as Kelly Clarkson and the whole American Idol idea of making pop music, Dr. Luke and Katy Perry, as well as Dr. Luke and Kesha, and it talks about K-pop and the new changes that are happening to the market because of services like Spotify and other streaming apps. I thought that it was a very accessible history to this very modern kind of way of producing music. I think it's important to kind of understand who's behind the scenes and doing all these things. I've read a lot of reviews that have said that this is a lot like a pop song, like it goes down really easily, and I completely agree with that. I listened to all of it. I didn't turn it off. I just listened to it my entire trip without stopping, which is not something that usually happens when I'm on a 5-hour drive. So if you're looking for something that's really accessible and like a fun nonfiction book, I think this definitely is there, especially if you love the topic. And you definitely get to see how these producers have a way of thinking that is not necessarily like really healthy. It has a lot of quotes, like for example one about Max Martin using Britney Spears as like the person, the girl that he could use to make the music he really wants to make. Britney was like 17, 18 at the time. The same with Dr. Luke and Kesha, and Dr. Luke creating the idea of Kesha and then forcing her to make the music that he really wants her to make. I felt like the author dropped the ball a little bit for some of these things, and he didn't really go into talking about like the gender aspect of it, which I thought would have given us a lot of insight. When he talks about Kesha, he just talks to her as like a nightmare. I think that's even the title of the chapter, like it calls her a nightmare. Hello.
Okay.
You have puppy now, you can close the door. Bye! I do want to forewarn you that some of the things that the author says I don't really agree with, and I would have a different take on it. I wish he was a little bit more inquisitive on the power that producers have in comparison to like women who are in the industry and trying to become rising stars. It's not an equal partnership at all. I think John Seabrook does not mention that as much as he should have. In complete contrast to The Song Machine, the next thing that I read was Trainwreck by Sady Doyle, and this one also uses and talks about pop culture. Instead of shying away from the idea of using gender as a way to discuss it, this one completely takes on gender and takes on a very feminist stance in describing a lot of the stars that are surrounding us and the celebrities that surround us. I thought that this book had so many great comments about gender in our society and how our society reacts when female behavior is not being expressed as the society would see fit. You feel like when you're reading it this is going to be a stretch, but I thought that the way she argued it was really well done, and I believed her arguments like the majority of the time. In this book she is looking at different women in our history that have been considered train wrecks. We have that term and we use that term in our society, but also looking at like what we would have considered train wrecks in the past. She just has these really interesting anatomy of a train wreck chapters where she looks at women who would fit this, looks into what they did, and then just completely dismantles how that makes them a train wreck. I think it forged celebrity culture, which is something that I'm interested in and like reading about, as well as history, which is something else that I'm really passionate about, and kind of combine those two things, and then also use gender. So this book felt like it was perfect for me. Overall, I learned so much about women in history, like Harriet Jacobs and Charlotte Bronte and Mary Wollstonecraft and Billie Holiday, for example. And then there were a lot of modern women too that she talked about that I do know a lot about, but that she showed me a new way to look at them. Like, she definitely talked a lot about Amy Winehouse and Whitney Houston and Britney Spears. She used Monica Lewinsky and Hillary Clinton as like foils of each other. How one is like the sexless, cold woman, and we don't want that in a woman. And Monica is like the brunette, wanting affection and attention, and how we don't want that either. She's too clingy. So we want something from women that's like in the middle of that. And for that reason, Hillary Clinton and Monica Lewinsky both don't fit the way that we want females to behave. She writes in a way that's really easy to digest, and I really like that as well, especially listening to it on audiobook. So I'd say that Trainwreck, The Women We Love to Hate, Mock, and Fear, and Why is at the top of my list of books that I've read so far this year. The next thing that I read was The New Deal by Jonathan Case. This is a graphic novel, a standalone graphic novel, which is great because I can't keep up with series for some reason. This one deals with the 1930s, but it has nothing to do with what you'd expect. I mean, we're in the Depression era, but it has nothing to do with poverty. It's like a schmancy hotel where we're at, and it's just kind of like a burglary theft storyline. What inspired me to pick this up is that it said that it dealt with like class politics and the Depression. I feel like that's not really true. I thought that it would be a lot more thoughtful in those matters, but I don't think that's where Jonathan Case was really going, and it wasn't long enough to deal with that. So it's more a heist story. It's more about deceiving people, being charming to deceive people. It was like a fun thing to read, to pass the pages, but it didn't do any of like the more meaty substance things that I wanted it to do. Finally, the last thing that I read was Freedom Over Me by Ashley Bryan. This uses a document found by Ashley Bryan that lists the Fairchild's estate, and that included 10 slaves. All we know about them is their sex and their age and how much they were valued to the Fairchild's estate. We don't know anything else about them, their names, what they did, or anything of that sort. So Ashley Bryan kind of took those people, kind of created what these lives could have been like. It's a picture book, and it's done in free verse as well, so all the pages are like that, and it goes through each of them. They talk about like what they do. The second page is what they dream of and the way Ashley Bryan interprets them. My favorite thing about this was definitely the art on each page. I just really love the colors. I really love the faces, and I love the colors of the sheets as well. It was just visually striking to me as I was going through it. And all of the work that Ashley Bryan thought them of doing was all focused on the art, so like carpentry and basket weaving, painting. Overall, I enjoyed this as a picture book. I haven't read any picture books in a while. I think this is worth it if you are looking for something that has to do with African American history, or if you're looking to read more picture books. And that's it for me finally. That's a lot of random things that I've been reading. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I'm sorry I've been kind of AWOL. Hopefully I'll get some schedule going in my life, but probably not for like the next 3 weeks. Thanks for watching again, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.